And here we go. We are live. I love it. I love it. I love it. By the way, if we have not met before, my name is Rick Senninger, and I'm the founder of Tip Hypnosis, Transforming Individual Performance. And I do this every Thursday night. It's a live broadcast, and you're allowed to ask questions. We actually want you to ask questions because that's really what it's all about. If in order to have a live conversation, you have to actually be there to be involved. Now, how do you do it? It's very, very simple. You go ahead and text me. Don't do it in the chat. If you do it in the chat, I'm never going to see it. I want to actually be able to get your questions, but I don't want to be constantly distracted by the chats. Now, this is our second week in a row. And if we're at the first one, great. We talked about anxiety. We're going to be recapping that, doing a recap of that very, very quickly in just a moment. But the real issue is this. There are 12 different sections of this. It's all about making a transformation. That's what I do, is I help people transform their individual performance. Transform, making a change, something other than what they were transforming. Individual, that's you. You are making a cognizant decision, a cognitive decision to make a change. Okay, your performance, your behavior. That's what you're actually going to be changing in your thought process that goes with that. And that's the reason we do this through motivational hypnotherapy or hypnosis that's able to use as part of the tools I have in my bag to be able to help make all those things happen. But today we're talking about the second part. Last week we talked about anxiety. Anxiety being interpretive. You can be anxious about something, and you can also be excited about the same thing. That it's your interpretation. Where does that interpretation come from? It comes from your comfort zone. What does that mean? My comfort zone. That means what you were taught to feel safe when you were a small child, up until about age 8. A lot of people feel as though that's kind of the threshold. That up until that point, you're all about trying to survive. You're dependent upon your parents or upon an adult figure to make you feel safe, whether it's your teachers, your parents, some major adult figure in your life that was able to do that. So consequently, that is where everything stems from. So what makes me really, really excited might make you anxious. What makes me very, very anxious, you get very, very excited. I'll use a roller coaster as an example. I'm terrified of roller coasters. Well, I'm not so much anymore. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. Um, Hypnotherapy fixed that. I'm comfortable now with roller coasters, as long as they're for people under the age of 12 years of age. No, just kidding. But my point is this: is that roller coasters, for some people, they find them exhilarating, exciting. They can hardly wait. They actually go around the country or around the world to test out all the different roller coasters that are out there because they're really enthusiastic about it. They love it. It gets their mind-body connection going, the stimulation in their mind, the manifestation in their body of feeling excited. Somebody else absolutely terrified. You turn around and they start having all this dread. They start playing the what if game, by the way. Little note to self. If you ever start a sentence with what if, that is the definition of anxiety. You're building scenarios that may or may not ever come true, and more often than not will not come true. And you're making them real in your mind because you're trying to justify staying in your safe zone. So what if? You can what if anything. I can what if pigs can fly, What if pigs started to fly? Well, probably make it more difficult for a lot of things. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. So what I just want to share with you is that's where the root of your comfort comes from. So if we're looking to make a change, chances are you're going to be stepping outside of your comfort zone and just getting a chance to recognize that anxiety, why an important part of your life, don't want to get rid of it. You just learn to live with it. And if you have really extreme anxiety, then there's other things that can also be done to help you move forward with your life. You can move forward with your life regardless of your level of anxiety, as long as you're willing to approach it and your desire is there to make a change. Now, let's get to the next step. This is one of my really, really fun parts. I love discussing this. And that is, why can't I make a change in my life? Why is it no matter what I do, I keep coming back and making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again? And it just drives everybody crazy. It drives me crazy. I constantly pick the wrong women to date. I constantly, every time I have to study something, I have to study it and study it and study it. I can't make any changes. No matter what I do, I get stuck at a job. I get to a certain level and I just can't rise above that. I always get kind of pegged into one thing. Here's the answer. And it's so cool and you're going to love it. You're doing it to yourself. Oh, yeah. Because of those comfort zones we were talking about, you will actually temper your own behavior. I want you to think about something for just one moment. What would happen, or try and imagine having to reevaluate everything you've ever known and making a determination about if you change that one thought or that one perspective, no matter what it is, how that would change your life. And the reason people don't want to do that is because A, it shakes them right at their very, very core. I mean, literally just shakes the core. Okay. It's what you're brought up with. It's how you were taught to look at the world. If you missed the one last week, let me just say this. You have, everyone has their BS. It's not what you're thinking. I have three different definitions for BS. It is your behavioral system. It is your belief system. It is your biological system. Your BS is your BS. The way you look at the world is going to be completely different than any other person, including me, and even people that were raised in the same household you were raised in. It doesn't matter. Your choices are still your choices, the way you perceive things. So understand that first and foremost. So when it comes to making a change, we're back to the very beginning. I'm going to make this correlation one more time. And that is, we're going back to what you learned to feel safe. Understanding your anxiety goes up and down based upon whether you feel safe or not. Familiarity will determine anxiety. Interpretation of benign things will determine levels of anxiety. And now here comes change. And change means that you're going to have to reject something you've always believed to be true, because that's where the limits come into play. If you find yourself always in the same position at a company and can never go higher up than that, it's because somewhere in the process you believe that that's where you should be and you act accordingly. So other people would be in charge of maybe getting you elevated or up, get the next promotion, and you never get it. It's because they perceive you what you're projecting. If I could turn around and remove any stipulations, any limitations that you had from your own mind of what you were capable of doing, while still using some common sense. Okay. I did not say I could remove the thoughts from your mind that you should get into a boxing ring with Mike Tyson and expect to last more than 10 seconds. I didn't say that, I could turn around and change something and suddenly you could jump and dunk over LeBron. I didn't mean it like that. Let's be to the point here. It has to be something within your ability to change. Can I make myself 6'2"? The answer is no. However, the limited thinking that because I'm not 6'2" does not mean that I cannot play basketball has been defied so many times in the NBA by players who are like 5'9", 5'10", 5'6", 5'7". You don't have to be over 6 feet to play in the NBA. It's now been clarified. You don't have to do that. So limited thinking, everybody go, oh, you can never play, you're too short. Well, no, it's not true. So this is where unlimited thinking comes into play. And why do people reject that? Why do they reject it? Because it means they're wrong. It means what they were taught was wrong, which means that their value systems are wrong. Their interpretation of the world is wrong. That maybe even those people who were closest to them, their parents or grandparents or teachers or religious leaders or whomever was influential in their life, what they taught them was wrong because you have to reject that in order to move forward. Now, not everybody who talks about making changes, limitations on changes, like to address those issues. I don't have any problem with it because I love being very, very frank and very straightforward. And you're going to find that in these 12 different uh, videos that I do that involve your questions as well, that we do just that. I'm to the point. I'm not going to play. I don't see how that serves you. So you've learned all these things from childhood. You've got everything going on, and you kind of get what it's told you. And it involves that. It involves telling people who were in your life before that you don't agree with them now. You don't have to say you're wrong. You don't have to get up. You don't have to make a confrontation about it. What you just simply have to do is acknowledge the fact that it doesn't work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, if it's not making your life better, or you're not getting from life what it is that you know you're capable of doing, then there it is. You either you're going to let them define you or you're going to define you. Either you're going to reach your potential or you're going to be limited by other people's perspective of your potential. And that is a real shame. I would say of all the things I've known out of over 30 years of working with families, working with people, working with individuals, helping them become a better version of themselves after a big transition. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned it before, I'm a certified grief counselor. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. Um, working with people who are facing hospice, who are facing their own mortality, are facing the mortality of a loved one, are dealing with all kinds of things like doctors and hospice protocols and a thousand different things. Just a dynamic that is so outside of anybody's norm, and they're having to make a big transition all at one time. That it I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. I wrote a book called 10,000 Funerals and with 5-minute life lessons. I'm also a independent researcher on consciousness and recognized life after life. I'm also, as I mentioned to you, a certified grief counselor. So I've talked with people under all kinds of circumstances and helped people with transitions, and now the founder of Transforming Individual Performance. This is the way I handle things. The other thing you're going to hear me refer to is what I call the PIT method. This is a method that I actually facilitated. By the way, if you spell tip backwards, it spells PIT, right? I thought it was clever that day. So the PIT method is actually PIT, but there's three I's. There's inspired. That means something that motivates you, thinking. There is intuitive thinking. It feels right to you. And there's intellectual thinking. And so you recognize that this makes a lot of sense. These are the lenses that we look through everything. So you'll hear me talk about this throughout all 12 of the modules because of the fact that I want each of these are a standalone, but if you do the entire arc, you're going to understand a whole lot more about making real change. Now, moving forward here, let's just continue on with what we were doing and setting up things as to why it is that people feel uncomfortable because again, they're unfamiliar. People are making changes because they're unfamiliar. And now they're going to have to fill that time with something else. This is one of the biggest things that happens with folks that are dealing with behavioral issues, drug addictions, cigarette smoking, alcoholism. The time that you spent at happy hour every afternoon now has to be replaced with something else. And you need to find new behaviors and new things. And that's going to be all very, very new. It can also be very, very exciting. See what I'm talking about? You're going to be anxious about it and be nervous about it and unhappy about it, or you're going to be excited about it. Because learning something new can be really, really exciting. And it's something that you're choosing to do, then that's really, really great too. Because that's the other part about making a change. You're making the choice. No one can make you change. They can motivate you. They can facilitate it. They can plead, beg, borrow, scream, and cry. But no one can make you change. A real change has to come from within you. So that's the other part, being honest with yourself, not blaming other people for the way what has gone on in your life, but continuing to recognize that, as I stated earlier, if you're not getting what you want, a portion of it is your fault. I'm going to say all of it. I'm going to say a big portion of it is your fault because of your choices and you're making a choice. If you're under the age of 16, 17, younger, something like that, yeah, okay, you got another dynamic. You got parents, you got laws and things like that. But if you're over 21 and you're still blaming other people, yeah, definitely give me a call because we have some other issues we have to talk about that goes along with that. So here's what I want you to understand about when it comes to making a change. Number one, it has to be your idea. You have to be involved and want to do it. Number two, you're going to end up having to acknowledge that something that was motivating you, limiting you before was wrong. Okay? That's just pure and simple. Number three, you cannot just do it logically. You cannot just do it logically. You can't go in here, you know something? I'm going to quit drinking today. Boom, I quit drinking. Yeah. The success rate on that is such a fraction of 1%, and it only holds if it is hold at all for just a few hours, a few days, tops, maybe a week or two. Very few people can actually make an entire behavioral change out of nothing more than willpower. It does happen. I'm not going to say it's never happened. What I'm going to say is, and it's not a method I advocate because of the fact that such a low percentage of success to it. I just can't honestly do that. The other thing that ends up happening is that you need to make a change. You want to make a change. You acknowledge that you're going to have to say that other behaviors you've been involved with are going to have to go away, and you're going to have to substitute. You're going to be changing the time that you were dedicated towards bad behaviors or limiting behaviors now have to be altered or changed to behaviors that are going to serve you. All right. And last but not least, you have to be able to acknowledge that you're going to be different. A lot of times people go like, "Oh, well, I'm just going to end up being like, or whatever it is, whatever sarcastic thing that wants to come out of their mouth to describe people that they think that making a change will make them more like somebody else." Look, yes, you're going to change. I'm not going to BS you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're not going to change. Of course, you're going to change. That's the idea. You wanted to make a change. You can't keep doing what you've always done and expect a different outcome. You're going to make some changes. Are the changes going to be so dramatic that you're going to lose family and friends and so on? More often than not, no. In some cases, yes. Okay. If you're talking about drug and alcohol and things like that, yes. You're, all those buddies that you hung around with at happy hour, you're not going to be hanging out with them anymore. Okay. Because you're not going to be at happy hour anymore. That's a fact. But that's just one element. A lot of times, the change can be so positive that you're choosing to do things that make your life better, more enjoyable, more fulfilling, that those people around you that are maybe being less than supportive were probably never on your side anyway. They just wanted to get their own validation. So that is essentially what I want to address there. Now, Lori was just asking me a question that says, "How do I know whether my beliefs are truly mine or simply something that I inherited?" Wow, what a great question. You did inherit them. You inherited from your parents, who probably got them from their parents, and may have actually been a something got put together from, your dad, assuming that you're kind of in a mom-dad, relationship. Um, I realize that doesn't pertain to everybody, but just as an example here, not a perfect situation, just an example that you're saying, okay, dad had his values and perspectives and so on, and mom has her perspectives, and probably what you're taught is something in between. So it's actually a couple generations, and you'll hear about this generational trauma, generational behaviors, generational impact. It can work both ways. The great part about change is, and understanding how change takes place and what it takes for you to make a change. So once you understand it, then you have somebody to work with to help you do it because you can't do it on your own. You need a team of people. You need a support system, you need a professional assistant, you need all those things to make it happen. Because what we're going to be working on is we're going to be working on changing your approach to life, your behavioral system, which is going, you're going to have something called the RAS, reticular activation system, that's going to be rewired. We're going to be talking about neuroplasticity. We're going to be involving a lot of elements here to make this change occur, to make it really stick. And yes, you're going to come out a little bit different. But the most dynamic portion of this is, but the people you really love and love you, no, that is going to stay the same. Your outlook, you can't suddenly say, oh, wait a second, I was born in the South, so now that I've gone through these changes, I was born in Connecticut. No, that's not going to happen. So there's that. Um, it's also a matter of growth. And oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Amanda was asking me, she says, how does this work as so far as growth and cognitive behavior? You're going to have, God, that's why I love being around really smart people. Amanda Ballou, if I can tell you anything about this woman, one of the most amazing lives I have ever had the pleasure of engaging. Amanda is wicked smart. She has had experiences from literally all over the world. And she's lived a very, very dynamic life, a very engaging life. At the same time, she is just absolutely so well grounded that every time I speak with her, my life gets better. That's all I can say. My life's better when I talk to Amanda because if anybody can keep you grounded, she can. So now going back to this. So her question being that, making these changes in cognitive and so on, you're going to make the changes are going to occur through a natural evolution. And I'm not talking about 6 months or 6 years. I'm talking like probably with a good clinician, probably 6 or 8 sessions. Then we start getting into a rhythm where it's just like a follow-up every month or something like that for a few months. And you'll actually have a couple of behaviors change. And from there, we can keep modifying to whatever it is to making sure that you're getting what you want. But as you know, Amanda, these changes are not just, you're going to be making them innately because of the subconscious behavioral approaches, and you're going to, they become a new habit. And then the RAS system then interprets that as being your new norm, and your nervous system does not go off. And now it's just innately occurring. And so, like, and then all of a sudden, cognitively, you may be aware of, like, holy smokes, I just did something I would never have done 3 weeks ago. I never would have gone at it that way. I never would have approached it that way. Yeah, that's when you kind of recognize it's all working. It's working to your benefit, and you're making these minor changes and you're going forward. So anyway, that's it. Very, very good. You guys have had some great questions this evening. I have really enjoyed this conversation. If you can't tell, why I can't make a change is one of my favorite things to do. If you would like to get in touch with me so you can share your story with me, I would absolutely positively love to hear it. I'm not kidding about that. This is my invitation to you. I would love to have that 30-minute conversation with you. And that's what I do is I allow about 25 to 35 minutes. I say 30 minutes. I don't put a stopwatch on it and hear your story. I love hearing other people's stories, what's going on in their lives. And if there's something I can do to help make your life better, we can discuss that. If I am not a good fit for you, if I'm not the person who, could really help you, but I will tell you right now, over 30 years in working with families, working with people, working with individuals, understanding behavioralism, understanding as a private researcher, consciousness, and so on, staying on top of everything that's going on this day and age. And there's a lot. I will share this with you. If I don't know, if I'm not the right fit, I'm going to know somebody who is, and I'll make that commitment to you. So if you have any questions at all, please give me a call at 407-490-5022. My name is Rick Senninger. This is Transforming Individual Performance, doing it one conversation at a time. And I thank you so very, very much for joining us this evening. This has been entirely my pleasure. And you'll hear me say this all the time. I'm going to say it again. Please keep that radiance moving inside of you, the energy that you have inside of you. And as always, remain brilliant.